Perhaps I should thank this cheap paraffin candle. When its last drop of hot tear rolled onto the vanilla cream, burning an ugly dent into it, the wall clock was pointing exactly to midnight. My 26th birthday had ended, and just a minute before this, I had still foolishly believed Aaron's lie about an emergency M&A meeting. The Midtown Manhattan apartment was as quiet as a tomb in the dead of night, with only the refrigerator compressor emitting a muffled hum, like some kind of dying gasp. I stared at the cupcake in the center of the dining table, already collapsed at room temperature. I had picked it up on a whim from the bakery on the corner on my way home from work, originally intending it as a small ritual while waiting for the man who said he would surprise me. The phone screen lit up abruptly in the darkness. Not a text from Aaron, not a missed call, but a special follow notification from a social media app. Aaron almost never posted updates. His profile was as clean as his meticulously ironed shirts, with only a few landscape photos showcasing professionalism and group shots from industry summits. But now, among those colorful circles, his avatar had jumped to the very front. I tapped on that flickering ring. In that instant, I felt as if the blood had frozen in my veins. The background of the photo was a Michelin 3-star restaurant, its enormous floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the night view of Central Park. I had looked at that restaurant's reservation page countless times, and every time Aaron would say, "It's too expensive, Nicole. We need to save money for our future house." And now he was sitting across from that velvet seat I had longed for, yet I wasn't the one in the frame. Serena was wearing a wine-red silk slip dress, that aggressively bold shade of red, looking flamboyant and glamorous in the dim candlelight. Her hand rested on Aaron's wrist, the diamond ring on her ring finger refracting a blinding gleam in the shot. Aaron's hand didn't pull away. Instead, at the edge of the frame, he made a blurry gesture, like some kind of tacit response. The caption was just a short line in English, "Lost and found." It was posted 15 minutes ago. I thought I would cry or even smash my phone hard against the wall or call him immediately like a crazy woman to demand answers. But strangely, as I kept refreshing that page until that shade of red burned a spot onto my retina, I felt an unprecedented calmness. It was like someone who had been drowning in the deep sea for a long time, suddenly yanked to the surface by someone. After the searing pain in the lungs, cold and sobering air flooded into the chest. 6 years ago, Aaron rejected Serena in a rundown coffee shop on the university campus. Back then, Serena was leaving for Paris to pursue her artistic dreams, while Aaron was just a poor student on a scholarship. He turned and walked toward me, waiting for him in the rain, and in that moment his eyes looked so broken, yet so sincere. He said, "Nicole, only you are the reality I want." Back then, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. I had picked up a gem that someone else didn't know how to cherish. Now I finally understand. I was nothing but a Band-Aid he used to fill the void to get through his years of poverty. Now that he's made it big, the woman who represented all the glamorous fantasies of his youth has returned, and naturally the Band-Aid should be ripped off and thrown in the trash. I stood up, not touching that nauseating cake. I walked to the sink in the open kitchen, turned on the faucet, filled a glass with ice water, and downed it in one gulp. The glass made a crisp sound as it hit the marble countertop, sounding especially jarring in the dead silence of the night. I didn't have time to fall apart. Aaron is an extremely arrogant person. He probably assumed I would do what I did after every argument before. Wait for him to come home, listen to him make up some excuse full of holes, then choose to forgive him after his half-hearted coaxing. He might have even prepared a whole speech already, something like, "It was just a chance encounter," or "It was part of a business dinner." But this time, I wasn't going to give him a chance to explain. I walked into the bedroom, the place where we had lived together for 3 years. I dragged my dusty silver suitcase down from the top shelf of the walk-in closet. The sound of the zipper opening was like a sharp, mocking laugh. I started packing. Not the kind of angry, haphazard stuffing, but a precise separation like a surgeon performing an operation. I walked to the far left side of the wardrobe, the narrow section that belonged to me. Aaron always said his suits needed enough space to breathe, so I gave him half of the space that was originally mine, and my clothes could only be squeezed into the corner. I took them down one by one, folded them, and put them in the suitcase. My movements were so slow, as if I was dismantling these 6 years of time. That trench coat he gave me when he first got his year-end bonus. It was a sale item. The sleeves were a bit long, but I wore it for a full 4 years. I tossed it into the donation bag beside me, and that cheap matching couple's t-shirt we bought on our first trip to Long Island. His had long since been thrown into some clothing donation bin, who knows where, while mine was still neatly folded. I took it out, unfolded it, then, without hesitation, ripped open the collar and threw it on the ground as a rag. My eyes swept across the shoe cabinet, and I saw those red-soled high heels. They were the birthday present he gave me last year, ridiculously high heels with an extremely narrow last. He said, "Nicole, only when you wear these shoes will you look like a Manhattan hostess." But that night, when I wore them to accompany him to a cocktail party, my heels were rubbed raw and bloody. Every step felt like dancing on knife points. All he did was frown and say, "Just bear with it. Don't embarrass me." Looking back now, that was just the embodiment of all his control issues. He didn't need a comfortable partner. He just needed an ornament that could be stuffed into the mold he'd set. I kicked those shoes to the deepest corner of the entryway and changed into the comfortable flat loafers I'd bought myself. My phone started buzzing on the coffee table in the living room. The name Ethan was flashing on the screen. I stared at those letters until it automatically hung up. Then came the second call, the third. He was probably feeling guilty, or maybe Serena had gone to the restroom, giving him a moment to catch his breath and reassure his backup at home. I didn't block him. It wasn't time yet. I wanted him to think I was asleep, to think I was still waiting for him in my dreams like a fool. I put my phone on silent, tossed it back into my pocket, and continued my cleaning work. In the drawer of the nightstand sat an exquisite deep blue velvet box. It was the birthday gift I had originally planned to give him tonight, a mechanical watch from the 50s that I'd hunted down at an antique shop and spent 3 months having a watchmaker restore. Because he once said he liked things that had been baptized by time. To buy this watch and pay for the expensive restoration, I took on 3 extra freelance illustration jobs and pulled all-nighters for an entire month. I opened the box, watching the delicate hands on the dial move in the silence. It really was beautiful, carrying the texture of years gone by, just like what I once thought we were. But now I just felt sick. I took the watch out of the box and casually tossed it onto the empty nightstand. Without the box's protection, it looked like worthless junk. Maybe the cleaner would sweep it away tomorrow. Maybe Aaron would knock it to the floor like trash when he came back. None of that had anything to do with me anymore. The suitcase was gradually filling up. I looked around. The things that belonged to me were pitifully few. In this so-called home, the furniture was the minimalist style he picked. The wall art was the abstract stuff he liked. Even the air freshener was the cologne scent he specified. I was like a hermit crab, cautiously curled up in a shell that didn't belong to me, constantly worrying about being kicked out by its owner. Now I was going to completely erase every trace of myself from this space. I walked into the bathroom and swept my toothbrush, facial cleanser, and skincare products all into a garbage bag. Looking at the sink counter with only his lonely electric toothbrush and razor left on his side, a sense of vindictive satisfaction welled up inside me. But that wasn't enough. I wanted him to come back and face not just emptiness, but the collapse of his entire life order. I took out my phone, opened Spotify, and left the family subscription plan we'd shared for 3 years. It was linked to my credit card because he always said we didn't need to split such small expenses. Then Netflix, Amazon Prime, even the membership card for the dry cleaner downstairs, anything with my name on it or linked to my card, I canceled or changed the password. After doing all this, my fingertips felt a bit cold, but my mind was unusually clear. Finally, I walked back to the living room. On the wall hung a photo of us taken in Central Park last year. Back then, I was smiling so sweetly, too, the light in my eyes full of hope for the future. Aaron stood beside me, smiling, but his gaze was looking elsewhere. I took the photo down and pulled it out of the frame. I didn't tear it up, didn't cut it to shreds. I just placed it face down and fed it into the shredder. Accompanied by the buzzing sound of the machine devouring the paper, that smiling face turned into a pile of meaningless confetti. Goodbye, Aaron. Goodbye to that Nicole who was a fool for 6 years. 2 a.m, and Manhattan streets were still ablaze with lights. The neon glow outside the window was like the tireless eye of desire of this city. I zipped up my suitcase, the metallic click echoing through the empty apartment, the only accompaniment to this long goodbye. I didn't have much luggage, just 2 24-inch suitcases. What I wanted to take wasn't any memory from this house. It was myself, the books I'd bought, my painting supplies, my documents, and those few pieces of clothing that actually made me feel comfortable. As for those tight dresses I bought to cater to Aaron's taste, those useless ornaments I got to accommodate his social needs, I didn't take a single one. Standing at the entryway, I surveyed this space one last time. It looked both familiar and strange. Familiar because I'd spent countless nights waiting here. Strange because with my personal belongings removed, it had quickly reverted to a cold showroom. It no longer had that warmth of someone living here. Only the alienation piled up by expensive furniture remained. My gaze fell on the display cabinet in the corner of the living room where Aaron's proudest collection sat, a massive Lego Star Wars Millennium Falcon model. It was the 3rd year we were together, and he bought it while recovering from an illness at home. Over 7,000 pieces, and we lay on the carpet assembling it for an entire week. Back then, he wasn't as busy as he is now, and he'd scratch his head anxiously when he couldn't find a tiny piece, then hug me tight and kiss me all over excitedly when I helped him find it. Those were the rare, purely happy times between us. I walked over and gazed at the ship through the glass cabinet door. It was perfect, every detail fitting together flawlessly, symbolizing how we, too, once had days that meshed so tightly. But right now, I just wanted to destroy it. I opened the cabinet door and reached toward the tail of the ship. There was an extremely hidden but crucial connector piece there, supporting the entire rear thruster structure. If I removed it, nothing would look off from the outside, but with just the slightest touch, or given enough time under gravity's pull, the entire tail structure would collapse, like dominoes. My fingers pressed down, a gentle flick. With a soft click, the gray brick fell into my palm. This kind of secret destruction brought me more pleasure than simply knocking it down. Just like our relationship, glamorous on the surface, but the core had long been hollowed out inside, just waiting for a single moment of tremor to come crashing down. I clutched that piece in my palm, the cold plastic edges digging painfully into my skin. I wouldn't take it with me, nor would I throw it in the trash. I casually slipped it into the bottom of the vase nearby, a place Aaron would never think to look. This spaceship would never be complete again, just like some cracks. Once they form, they're destined to never be repaired. I returned to the entryway and took out a yellow sticky note from my bag. I didn't write a lengthy accusation, nor did I write any pleas that would only make me look pathetic. For someone like Aaron, any emotional outpouring would be interpreted as, "You're throwing a tantrum," and would become material for him to mock me as emotionally unstable in front of his friends later. I uncapped the pen and wrote a single word on the paper. Done. It meant both completed and finished. I stuck the note onto the antique watch I had abandoned, then took out the key ring with the pink charm and gently placed it beside it. The sound of metal hitting marble announced the final end. I didn't look back. Pushing open the heavy fire door of the apartment, the cold air in the corridor hit me in the face. The numbers on the descending elevator were flickering, as if counting down the time for me to escape this cage. The lobby security guard, Robert, was dozing off, jolted awake by the sound of footsteps. Seeing me dragging 2 suitcases, he stood up in surprise. "Miss Nicole? Going on a trip this late? Need me to call a car for you?" "No need, Robert." I gave him a faint smile, probably the most genuine expression I had all night. "The car's already waiting outside." "All right, have a pleasant trip. When will you be back?" he asked out of habit. "I'm not coming back." Robert froze for a moment, seemingly not understanding what I meant, but I had already pushed through the revolving door, stepping into the cold night wind of New York. The Uber I'd booked was parked by the curb. The driver helped me load my luggage into the trunk. I got into the back seat and gave the destination I knew by heart. "JFK Airport, thanks." The car started moving. The scenery outside the window began to recede. Those familiar streets, the dry cleaner we used to go to, that brunch place we always gave up on because of the lines, they were all drifting away from me. I watched Manhattan's glittering skyline gradually shrink in the rearview mirror, and surprisingly felt not a trace of reluctance, only a sense of exhaustion after putting down a heavy burden. I took out my phone and opened the airline's app. The flight to Seattle would depart in 3 hours. That was my place of escape. I spent some time on the West Coast when I was little. The rainy season there was always long, and the gray-blue sky and humid air made me feel inexplicably at ease. Aaron hated rain. He liked sunny, vibrant California or dry, bustling New York. I always used to accommodate him, but I remember writing in my journal, "If one day I could have my own life, I want to live not far from Pike Place Market, where I can smell sea salt and coffee every day." Now, this wish was no longer a wish, but a reality about to happen. On the way to the airport, my phone buzzed a few more times. Messages from some mutual friends of ours in New York, probably having seen Aaron's post, coming to test my reaction. "Hey, Nicole, what's up with that photo? Are you okay? Did Aaron have too much to drink?" Even a few socialites from Serena's circle were giving me fake likes, as if watching a farce about to unfold. I didn't reply to anyone. I opened my contacts, my finger hovering over the name Ethan. Once I had set a special ringtone for this name, pinned it to the top of all my messaging apps. Now, looking at it, I just felt like I was looking at a dead man's name. I clicked, block this caller. Then Instagram, WhatsApp, blocked, deleted, unfollowed. A series of movements flowed like water without any hesitation. Each tap on the screen felt like cutting an invisible chain wrapped around me. At the airport, after checking in my luggage, I stood in front of the security checkpoint and looked back at the city behind me. Goodbye, those hypocritical social circles. Goodbye, that fabricated elegance I put on to please others. Goodbye, that Nicole who was humble to the dust, thinking that just waiting could earn her love. I turned and walked into the security passage. When the plane soared into the sky, pierced through the thick clouds, and the first ray of morning light broke through the darkness, I closed my eyes. And in that apartment, Aaron was probably still sleeping off his hangover or holding his lost and found while having sweet dreams. He had no idea what an empty world he would face when he woke up. He thought I was the harbor that would always wait in the same place, but he forgot that even harbors can dry up. When he pushes open the door tomorrow, expecting a warm cup of honey water and my smiling face, all that will greet him is a room full of cold emptiness and that note that says, "Done." And my new life has just begun. When Aaron woke up, his head ached like someone had hammered his temples hard. The nausea from the hangover forced him to curl up in bed for a while until the churning in his stomach subsided a little. The light seeping through the gap in the curtains was annoyingly glaring, and he instinctively reached out to feel the other side of the bed. Empty. This wasn't strange. By this time normally, Nicole would have been up long ago. She'd be busy in the kitchen. The air should be filled with the aroma of coffee and toast, or at least there'd be a cup of warm honey water on the nightstand. But today there was nothing. The air only had an unsettling, overly clean smell. No coffee aroma, nor that familiar faint lavender fabric softener scent that belonged to Nicole. "Nicole!" he called out, his voice so hoarse it was like he had a mouthful of sand. No response. Aaron sat up with a frown, rubbing his throbbing forehead. Memories began replaying frame by frame, like a fragmented film reel. Last night was Nicole's birthday. He had planned to come home early, but Selena suddenly called him, saying she was back in the country, had problems with her luggage, and was at a loss all alone at the airport. He just went to help out, really just to help. Then Serena said she'd treat him to dinner to thank him, and then came that damn bottle of red wine and all those memories of the past. That Instagram story. How did he even post it? Serena grabbed his phone to take a selfie, said they should commemorate old friends reuniting, and he was too drunk to stop her. He fished his phone out of his pants pocket on the floor, wanting to check the time. The moment the screen lit up, dozens of unread messages and missed calls popped up, but not a single one from Nicole. An inexplicable panic began spreading from the depths of his heart. He opened Instagram, and that post from last night was still pinned at the top. The likes had already broken 100, and the comments below were all teasing from their mutual friends and flattery from Serena's socialite girlfriends. "Wow, you two are such a perfect match. It was always meant to be you two. What about Nicole?" This comment was from his college roommate, David, and it was particularly jarring. Aaron irritably closed the page and dialed Nicole's number. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is busy." He hung up and dialed again. "Still busy. What the hell, throwing a tantrum again." He muttered, flipping off the covers and getting out of bed. His feet touched the floor, and the icy sensation made him shudder. He remembered there used to be a soft shag rug here, one Nicole had specifically bought to keep him from stepping on the cold floor barefoot in winter. Now the rug was gone. Aaron froze for a moment, looking around. The bedroom looked somewhat different. It wasn't just the carpet. The crystal vase on the nightstand that always held fresh flowers was gone, and the succulents on the windowsill had disappeared too. He strode quickly to the walk-in closet and yanked open the wardrobe door. The left half of the wardrobe was completely empty with barely any hangers left. Only a few crumpled old clothes lay forlornly in the corner, like some kind of silent mockery. His heart sank heavily. No, this couldn't be happening. How could Nicole leave? She loved him so much, loved him to the point of being almost pathetic. For these 6 years, no matter how late he came home, no matter how much he ignored her, she was always there. She was like a permanent piece of furniture in this apartment, existing as a matter of course. "Nicole!" He rushed out of the bedroom, shouting in the living room. The only response was his own echo. The living room was even more terrifyingly empty. Half the throw pillows on the sofa were gone, and the sketchbook she always used for drawing on the coffee table had disappeared too. He rushed into the bathroom. The bottles and jars that used to be packed full on the sink counter had vanished completely, leaving only his lonely half of the toiletries. On the mirror, there was still a half-torn adhesive mark from a hook. That was where she used to hang her hair ties. Aaron looked at himself in the mirror, stubbled, pale-faced, and suddenly felt an unprecedented wave of fear. This wasn't like running away from home after a fight. This was like a premeditated retreat, a complete purge. He returned to the living room, his gaze falling on the cabinet by the entrance. There sat an old watch, an antique style he had once casually mentioned he really liked. A yellow sticky note was attached to the watch face, with only one word on it: "Done." Aaron's hands trembled as he tore off the sticky note. The word hit him like a sledgehammer, slamming hard against his chest. Over? What was over? Their relationship? Or her patience? Next to it was that set of keys. He had given her a copy 2 years ago, joking at the time. Don't lose it. This is the key to the future. Now she had returned it to him. Fuck! Aaron slammed the keys hard onto the ground. He took out his phone and frantically dialed Nicole's number again. This time, there wasn't even a busy tone, just a direct message saying, "Cannot be connected." This meant he had been blocked. He opened WeChat and sent a message. "Where are you? Stop messing around. Come back." A red exclamation mark appeared on the screen. WhatsApp, Instagram, even Twitter, all blocked. She had erected an impenetrable wall against him in the digital world, completely shutting him out. Aaron felt suffocated. He had never imagined that Nicole, who was always so docile, always waiting, could be so thorough when she turned cold. Just then, the doorbell rang. Aaron rushed over like he was grasping at a lifesaver, yanked the door open. "Nicole, I knew you would." Standing at the door wasn't Nicole, but Serena. She was carrying a few shopping bags with flawless makeup, beaming brightly. "Surprise! I figured you definitely haven't had breakfast yet, so I brought some bagels and coffee. You drank way too much last night. I was worried you'd have a headache." The moment he saw Serena, Aaron didn't feel any joy. Instead, an irrepressible wave of disgust surged up inside him. If it weren't for her, if it weren't for that damn dinner last night, if it weren't for that Instagram story... "Who told you to come?" Aaron's voice was cold as ice. The smile on Serena's face froze. "Aaron, what's wrong with you? I was just checking on you." "I asked who told you to come," Aaron roared. "You're not welcome here. Get out." Serena stepped back in fright. The shopping bags dropped to the ground, coffee spilling everywhere. "What the hell is wrong with you? Last night you were saying I was your most important." "That's because I was drunk." Aaron cut her off harshly. "Last night was a mistake. You shouldn't have come back, and you definitely shouldn't be here. Now immediately get the hell out of my sight." Serena's eyes turned red. She had probably never been yelled at like this before. She bit her lip, glared fiercely at Aaron, then turned and ran toward the elevator. Aaron slammed the door hard, leaning against it and gasping for breath. But he knew that driving Selena away couldn't solve the problem. Nicole still hadn't come back. He had to find her. But where to look? He suddenly realized that he knew nothing about Nicole's life. He didn't know what friends she had in New York, didn't know where she went to unwind besides painting. For the past 6 years, she had always been revolving around him, while he had never truly entered her world. He thought of David, the college roommate who had asked, "Where's Nicole?" in the comments. David had a good relationship with Nicole. Maybe he knew something. He dialed David's number. It rang for a long time before being answered, and David's voice sounded very impatient. "If you're calling to show off your new and old flames, then forget it." "David, Nicole is gone," Aaron said urgently. "She moved out and blocked all my contacts. Do you know where she went?" The other end of the line was silent for a few seconds. Then came a cold laugh. "Do you really not know, or are you playing dumb? Bro, you screwed up. This time you really screwed up." "Cut the crap. Tell me where she is." "I don't know." David's tone turned cold. "Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. Nicole has suffered enough for you these past years. Last night was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Let her go, Aaron." Beep! The call was hung up. Aaron held his phone, standing in the empty living room, feeling a loneliness unlike anything he'd ever experienced. This loneliness wasn't because there was no one around, but because the person who had always been by your side, the person you thought would never leave, had suddenly pulled away. That immense hollowness was harder for him to bear than the headache from a hangover. Just then, his phone received a text notification from the bank. "Your account has received a transfer, $1,850. Note, final payment." It was from Nicole. The amount was exactly half a month's rent and utilities. Even when leaving, she'd calculated everything so precisely, not taking a single cent from him, not leaving behind a trace of debt. This approach, rational to the point of being almost cold, was the greatest humiliation to him. Aaron stared at that number, his eyes suddenly stinging. He rushed into the bedroom, wanting to find some trace she'd left behind, even just a note or a single strand of hair. But he found nothing. except for that Millennium Falcon model missing a piece. He walked over and looked at the massive ship. For some reason, it looked off, like it had lost some kind of balance. He reached out and touched the tail fin. A loud clatter. The entire tail structure collapsed in an instant, hundreds of pieces scattering across the floor, making a crisp yet despairing sound. Aaron stared blankly at the mess on the floor, finally realizing that some things, once broken, can never be put back together again. The rain in Seattle wasn't the kind of torrential downpour, but rather like fine stitches, silently sewing together heaven and earth. I pushed open the window of the B&B, and the moist, cold air rushed toward me, carrying the salty scent of seawater and the roasted aroma of coffee from somewhere in the distance. This was the taste I wanted. This B&B was an old but cozy attic. The hosts were a retired elderly couple who didn't ask about my background. They just brought me a bouquet of fresh tulips and a plate of homemade blueberry muffins on my first day. "The rain here will soften your heart, dear," the old lady said to me with a smile. Perhaps. During these 3 days, I turned off my phone, didn't go check in at tourist spots, and wasn't in a hurry to find a job. I just slept until I woke up naturally each day, then threw on a coat and sat in a nearby cafe for the whole afternoon, sketching the passersby outside the window or just zoning out. This kind of freedom of doing nothing was a luxury I had never experienced in those 6 years in New York. There, every minute was filled with efficiency and anxiety, either rushing to meet deadlines or rushing to see Aaron. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in New York, Aaron's world was experiencing a long overdue storm. I discovered this when I turned on that backup phone again on the 3rd night. I didn't log back into my original social media accounts, but registered a new burner account and quietly took a peek at that world from before. Aaron's Instagram changed. That official announcement post was gone, replaced by a black and white photo full of that decadent vibe. Just that Lego Millennium Falcon with a missing piece. No caption at all. I wanted to laugh, but couldn't even pull up the corners of my mouth. Meanwhile, my old email inbox received an email from a sender named E. That was the only channel Aaron couldn't block, maybe because he wasn't dumb enough to forget my work email. The email had no subject, just a few lines. "Nicole, I know you're reading this. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, just asking you to tell me if you're safe. I'm not used to life without you. Not even that damn shampoo smell. Come back. Let's start over. This time I'll listen to you." I glanced at it, then clicked delete permanently. Start over? Some things are like that Lego spaceship. The core pieces are already lost. No matter how you piece it together, it's still falling apart. Besides, I don't like that "I'll listen to you" phrasing. It's still charity from someone in a position of power. What I want isn't obedience, it's respect. On the other side of New York, Aaron was sitting in that messy living room with already cold takeout in front of him. He hadn't been to the office for 3 days. His assistant called countless times, all brushed off with sick leave. He never knew finding someone could be this hard. In those 3 days, he searched every corner of the house like a madman, trying to find any clue to where Nicole might have gone. He even dug through the trash, only to find some cut-up clothing tags. It wasn't until the afternoon of the 4th day, when he was cleaning out the study, that an old magazine fell from the top of the bookshelf and landed at his feet. It was a 2-year-old issue of Kinfolk, with a rainy scene of Seattle's Pike Place Market on the cover. Aaron picked it up, and the magazine automatically fell open to a dog-eared page. Several lines on that page had been circled in red pen, an introduction to a boutique cafe in Seattle, Storyville Coffee. In the margin beside it, there was Nicole's elegant handwriting. "The fireplace here looks so warm. If I ever get the chance, I want to sit here and paint the rain all day." Aaron's fingers traced over those words, and memories suddenly came flooding back like a tide. He remembered a rainy night 2 years ago when Nicole was curled up in his arms, flipping through this magazine, pointing at this picture, and saying to him, "Aaron, how about we retire in Seattle someday? I heard the coffee there is the best in America." At the time, he was replying to work emails and said without even looking up, "Seattle? That place where it rains 300 days a year? Give me a break, I'd get depression. If we're going anywhere, it's Miami." Nicole didn't say anything at the time, just silently closed the magazine. Looking back now, each of those silences was an accumulation of disappointment. "Seattle," Aaron murmured to himself. He immediately turned on the computer and logged into the iPad Nicole used to use. It was the only device she hadn't signed out of. Although most of the apps were locked, the search history in the Maps app was still there. With trembling hands, he tapped open the search history. The latest few records were all about Seattle, rental information, flight price comparisons, and the location of that coffee shop. Although there was no specific address, this was already enough. Aaron felt his heart start beating again. He immediately dialed his assistant. "Book me a flight to Seattle, the earliest one. Yes, now, right away." Hanging up the phone, he rushed into the bedroom and took out a small red velvet box from the deepest part of the safe. Inside was a 2-carat diamond ring. He had bought it half a year ago, originally planning to propose at the company's year-end party, letting everyone witness his success and happiness. But he kept putting it off, always feeling he could wait a bit longer, wait for a more suitable moment, or just simply enjoy the freedom of being unmarried. Now he couldn't wait any longer. "Nicole, wait for me," he said to the empty room, his voice carrying an almost obsessive determination. "This time, I'll take you to that coffee shop." Meanwhile, in Seattle, I was sitting by the window at Storyville Coffee, holding a hot latte in my hands. The fire in the fireplace was burning brightly, the firewood crackling. The rain outside was still falling, and the neon sign of Pike Place Market looked hazy and warm through the mist. I took out my sketch pad and began to draw the scene before me. No longer to please anyone, no longer to rush deadlines. Every stroke followed my breath, free and relaxed. Halfway through my drawing, a man nearby walked over. "Excuse me, your lines have such a lively spirit. Are you a professional illustrator?" I looked up and saw a gentle, smiling face. He was wearing a simple flannel shirt with a faint woody scent about him. "Sort of," I answered with a smile. "But right now, I'm just drawing what I want to draw." "That's the best state to be in." He pointed at the empty cup on my table. "Mind if I buy you another drink? In exchange, would you hear a little suggestion I have for this painting?" I paused for a moment, then nodded. "Of course." At this moment, I suddenly realized that life isn't just about waiting and people-pleasing. In this unfamiliar city, there are new colors, new conversations, and that long-lost flutter of the heart born from the unknown. Meanwhile, Aaron was sitting in first class on a flight to Seattle, gazing at the clouds outside the window. He thought he was rushing toward a reconciliation, not knowing he was flying toward a finale that had already ended. Our time zones had long stopped being on the same scale. Mornings at the market always began with the energetic calls of fish vendors and the hissing steam of coffee machines. This was already my 5th day since arriving in Seattle. That bone-deep anxiety seemed to have been slowly washed away by the rain here, replaced by a calm, almost transparent rhythm of life. I bought a bouquet of tulips at a flower shop, the deep purple kind, with a faint creamy white along the petal edges. The shop owner was a friendly Asian auntie who smiled when she saw me and said, "You look great today, Nicole." "Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty well too. No need to wake up early to iron someone's shirt. No need to worry if tonight's dinner suits someone's taste. I don't even have to put on makeup. Just a bit of sunscreen and I can head out." This feeling of ease is kind of addicting. I held my flowers and walked toward my favorite Storyville coffee. Today I wanted to try their new hazelnut oat latte. Meanwhile, Aaron had been standing at the street corner across from the coffee shop for a full 2 hours. Seattle's rain wasn't as romantic as he'd imagined back in New York. This kind of damp cold seeped right into your bones, and since he was only wearing a thin cashmere coat he'd specifically picked to look decent, his hands and feet were already freezing. He watched the crowd coming and going from the coffee shop, and every time the door chime rang, his heart would leap up, then sink heavily again after he saw who it was. He didn't know if Nicole would come today, but he had no other choice. This was his only lead. "Sir, want to buy some flowers?" A street vendor, probably taking pity on him, came over to make a sale. "Fresh roses just arrived, perfect for apologies." Aaron was stunned for a moment, looking at that gaudy bouquet of red roses. He remembered Nicole once said that compared to roses, she preferred tulips, because tulips were understated and reserved, not showy and flamboyant like roses. No thanks, he refused. Just then, that familiar figure appeared at the street corner. She was wearing an off-white trench coat with simple jeans and canvas shoes underneath. Her hair was casually pulled into a bun, and she was holding a bouquet of deep purple tulips. She looked a bit thinner, but her spirits were good. That tense look around her brows and eyes that she always had back in New York had now completely relaxed, and there was even a faint, almost imperceptible smile at the corners of her lips. It was a smile he hadn't seen in a long time, the smile that belonged to the 22-year-old Nicole. Aaron felt like his breath was about to stop. He subconsciously straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and walked over on stiff legs. "Nicole." That voice didn't seem out of place amidst the sound of rain, yet it was enough to freeze my steps instantly. I turned around and saw Aaron. He looked somewhat disheveled. The shoulders of that expensive coat were soaked by the rain, the color patchy and dark and light spots. His hair was no longer as immaculate as before, blown somewhat messy by the wind. Most importantly, it was his eyes. That look filled with urgency, eagerness to please, and even a hint of fear was something I had never seen before. The old him was always so high and mighty, looking at me with that scrutinizing gaze. But now he was like a prisoner, waiting to be sentenced. "Aaron?" I thought I'd be surprised or angry, but actually, my voice was so calm that even I was taken aback. "What are you doing here? I've been looking for you for so long." He took a step forward, wanting to get closer to me, but stopped when he saw me instinctively step back. His hand hung awkwardly in midair, then dropped weakly. "I saw the notes you wrote in the magazine. I figured you'd come here." "Oh," I responded flatly. "Just for this?" "Nicole, I know I was wrong," he said quickly, as if afraid I would disappear the next second. "I've thought a lot these past few days. I know I was a jerk before. I ignored your feelings. I was too selfish. The thing with Serena, it was a misunderstanding, really. I've blocked her and I won't have any contact with her again. I've also deleted that Instagram post. I've taken care of everything." He sounded so sincere, even somewhat humble. If it had been a month ago, hearing these words, I probably would have been moved to tears and thrown myself into his arms. But now, I just found it ironic. "Aaron," I interrupted him, "did you block her because you got tired of her demands, or because you actually felt sorry toward me?" He froze, clearly not expecting me to ask that. No matter what the reason was, it doesn't matter anymore. I looked at him, my tone without a single ripple. "You see, you deleted the posts, blocked people, and you thought that counted as handling it. In your eyes, feelings are like a program with a bug. Just patch it up, restart it, and it can keep running. But for me, that was a collapse. That's not true. I really do love you." Aaron panicked, reaching into his pocket to pull something out. "Look, I brought this." That familiar red velvet box appeared in his hand. He opened it, and that 2-carat diamond ring still sparkled with dazzling brilliance under the gloomy sky. "Marry me, Nicole." His voice was trembling slightly. "We'll go back to New York and get married. I'll buy you that brownstone apartment you like. I'll add your name to the deed. I'll be with you for every birthday, really." Passers-by around us stopped to watch, and some made good-natured cheering sounds. On American streets, proposals were always a joyful event that drew crowds. But all I felt was absurdity. This ring was a full 3 years late, and the way it appeared now seemed more like a desperate bribe, a futile attempt to fill an emotional black hole with material things. Aaron, I didn't take the box, didn't even spare another glance at that diamond. I don't like this ring. What? He obviously hadn't processed it yet. This is Tiffany's latest design. I spent so long picking it out. I don't like it, and I don't like you anymore either. The moment those words left my mouth, the air around seemed to freeze. The onlookers' jeering stopped abruptly, turning into awkward whispers. Aaron's face instantly turned deathly pale. That confidence, that arrogance as a Wall Street elite, completely shattered in this moment. "What are you saying, Nicole? Stop joking around." He tried to squeeze out a smile, but it looked worse than crying. "Are you still mad at me? I can wait. You can yell at me, hit me, whatever. Just don't say things like that." "I'm not mad." I shook my head, looking seriously into his eyes. "Really, Aaron, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just tired. I used to think that loving someone meant waiting, enduring, becoming the person he wanted me to be. But these past few days here, I suddenly realized that I don't need to wait for anyone. I can live just fine on my own. I like who I am now, and I don't want to go back." "But I can't live without you," he shouted, his eyes turning red. "These days since you left, the house feels like a dead man's tomb. I can't find my socks. I don't know how to use that damn coffee machine. I can't even sleep. Nicole, I need you." "What you need is a nanny or a fully automatic smart butler, not me." I sighed. "Aaron, you don't love me. You love that shadow who always revolves around you, satisfying all your narcissistic needs. Now the shadow has grown its own feet and wants to leave." "That's not true." "Go back, Aaron." I held the tulips in my arms a little tighter. "New York is your battlefield. This place isn't for you. Your latte is getting cold." I pointed at the coffee in his hand that he'd been gripping tightly, no longer steaming. He'd just bought it from a roadside stand, probably to steal his nerves, or maybe just to keep warm. Now, that cup of coffee, just like his relationship with us, had gone completely cold. With that, I turned and walked toward the entrance of Storyville Coffee. "Nicole!" he called after me, his voice carrying a gut-wrenching desperation. I didn't look back. Pushing open the heavy wooden door, the aroma of coffee and warm air washed over me. The man in the flannel shirt I'd seen yesterday was sitting by the window. Seeing me come in, he waved at me. "Hey, Nicole, over here. I saved you the best seat. You can even watch the rain." I smiled at him and walked over. As I sat down, I glanced out the window. Aaron was still standing there, like an abandoned statue. The rain was coming down harder, soaking his expensive ring box and drenching that proud heart of his that had never truly understood how to love. But he would leave eventually, just like this rain would eventually stop. And my coffee was piping hot. Aaron didn't know how long he had been standing in the rain. It wasn't until a homeless man passed by, looked at him like he was an idiot, and tried to reach for the expensive-looking velvet box in his hand that he suddenly snapped back to his senses, shoving the box into his pocket like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Cold. That was the only thing he felt right now. The cold came not just from his soaking wet clothes in Seattle, but also from that huge, howling hole in his heart. She rejected him. She rejected not only the ring, but him as a person. She said she didn't like him anymore, her tone as calm as if she were saying, "I don't feel like having a sandwich today." How could this be possible? She was Nicole, the Nicole who would stay up late drawing for a month just to buy him an antique watch, the Nicole who would stay by his bedside all night without sleeping when he was sick. How could she just stop liking him like that? Aaron walked into the nearest bar like a zombie. It wasn't evening yet, so the bar wasn't crowded. He ordered a glass of whiskey and downed it in one gulp. The burning liquid scorched his throat, but it couldn't warm his heart. His phone rang. It was David. "Where are you? That crazy woman Serena made a scene at the company, saying you kicked her out for your ex-girlfriend. Now the whole company is watching the drama." David's tone carried a frustrated helplessness, like he was disappointed Aaron couldn't do better. "I'm in Seattle," Aaron murmured, staring at his empty glass. "What? You actually went?" David was stunned for a moment, then sighed. "Did you see Nicole?" "I did." "And then? Did she come back with you?" "No." Aaron gave a bitter smile, tears suddenly falling into his glass. "She said she doesn't need me anymore." "David, she said she doesn't need me anymore." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "Bro, honestly, if I were her, I wouldn't go back either." David's voice dropped low. "You know what? Everyone saw it a long time ago. These past few years, what did you even treat her as? Every time you brought her out to hang out, you never cared about her feelings, just focused on showing off. She wanted to go to Coachella. You said that was pretentious, artsy whining. She wanted to get a cat. You said it was a shedding nuisance. You kept dismissing her until she really believed she couldn't live without you." Aaron wanted to argue back, but found himself with nothing to say. "Now she's woken up. You should be happy for her." David paused for a moment. "Let her go, Aaron. Save yourself some dignity." Hanging up the phone, Aaron looked out the window. The rain was still falling, blurring the entire world. He suddenly remembered, a long time ago, when he wasn't this rich yet, wasn't this busy yet, he had also loved Nicole wholeheartedly like that. Back then, they crammed into a basement in Brooklyn, no heating in winter, and he would tuck her feet against his chest to keep them warm. Back then, he said, "Nicole, when I have money, I'm going to buy you a big house, so you'll never have to suffer again." Now, he has money, has a big house, but the only thing he lost was the person who was willing to suffer with him. Meanwhile, in the coffee shop, I was chatting with that man named Mark. He was the typical Seattle type, working at a tech company, but an avid outdoor enthusiast in his spare time. "This painting," he pointed at the sketch I had just finished, "the line work here is really interesting, like there's light hidden in the rain. It was that scene from just now. In the painting was a blurry figure from behind, resolutely walking toward a glowing door, while behind her was a dark silhouette crouching in the rain. This is a farewell." I took a sip of my hot latte and said softly, "Saying goodbye to my past self?" "Sounds like a good story." Mark didn't press further, just smiled gently. "To celebrate new beginnings, how about going hiking at Mount Rainier this weekend? The wildflowers are just starting to bloom." I looked into his sincere eyes where there was none of that suffocating desire for control, only an equal, respectful invitation. "Sure," I nodded. This didn't mean I was ready to start a new relationship, but I was willing to try a new way of living, to climb mountains, to see wildflowers, to breathe different air. When I left the coffee shop, it was already evening. The rain had stopped, and a gorgeous sunset glow appeared on the horizon, dyeing Pike Place Market's sign golden. I deliberately avoided that street corner from before and took another route back to the B&B, but I still paused for a moment when passing by a trash can. There lay a bunch of red roses that had already wilted a bit, probably discarded by some vendor who couldn't sell them, or tossed by someone whose confession of love had failed. I suddenly thought of that red velvet box in Aaron's pocket, that diamond ring. Maybe he'd take it back to New York, lock it in a safe, and let it become an expensive lesson in his life, or maybe he'd angrily throw it into the bay, letting it sink to the bottom. None of that had anything to do with me anymore. My phone buzzed. It was a text alert from the bank. "Your account has received a transfer. $50,000. Note, compensation. I'm sorry." It was Aaron. $50,000. For me, right now, it was a huge sum. It could let me live comfortably in Seattle, maybe even open a small art studio. But looking at that number, I just found it laughable. Until the very end, he was still using his go to way to solve problems, using money to buy off guilt, using money to try to balance a scale that had long been tipped. I opened my mobile banking app and clicked Return to Sender. I didn't want his compensation. Though my 6 years of youth had been wasted, they were priceless. Not something this measly $50,000 could buy off. Besides, accepting this money would mean I still had ties to him, would mean I was admitting I was a victim. I wasn't a victim. I was a survivor. After the refund went through, I also deleted the burner account I'd been using to check on things. This time, we were truly even. Back at the guest house, the landlady was baking cookies, and the whole place was filled with the scent of cinnamon and butter. "You're back, dear?" She wiped her hands. "How was your day?" "Great." I took a deep breath of this air full of homey warmth and smiled from the bottom of my heart. Couldn't be better. Yes, I might have lost a so-called elite boyfriend, lost a home in Manhattan, but I found myself again. In this city with its long rainy season and great coffee, Nicole's story has just turned to a new page.